So today I'm going to be explaining how to make my homemade chicken Alfredo recipe. I cannot actually physically show you how to do it because it takes too long. It takes usually roughly about an hour to make, but I will go step by step on how to do it, and I will also show you the products that I use. I chose this today because it's one of my family's favorite. They say they can't go to a restaurant and get better quality pasta or pasta sauce, even at Olive Garden, Italian Oven, any restaurant like that. They say mine is better, or they can't make it themselves as good, so I always make it. I always start off with the chicken. I'd make it one or two ways. It just depends on what the family wants that day. I will either take the boneless, skinless chicken breast. I will put it in a crock pot. I use water. I cover the chicken with water with about 4 to 6 bouillon cubes, just depending on the amount of chicken that I have. I will cook that on low for about 6 hours. You can also use the boxed chicken broth, chicken stock, or anything like that, as long as it is chicken flavored and it is covering the chicken completely. Or the next way I do is cut up the boneless, skinless breast into thinner strips, and I soak that in buttermilk for about 2 hours in the fridge. Closer time when I'm making the sauce, I will pull the chicken out of the fridge, roll it in flour, and I will place it in my air fryer at 400 degrees for about 25 to 30 minutes. It just depends on the thickness of the breast. My next step would be getting my pasta water ready. I do about 2 teaspoons of salt, roughly. A little bit more, a little bit less will not hurt. And I always do about 2 tablespoons of canola oil. You always want to make sure you do oil in your water, because if not, the pasta will stick together. That causes the pasta not to cook correct, and it gets kind of gummy. You always want to make sure you do the oil. Very important step. For my sauce, I do that homemade. I start off with 1 quart of heavy whipping cream, and then I also use 1 quart of light whipping cream. The brand of the cream does not matter, but you always want to make sure it's 1 quart of each. 2 quarts of heavy whipping cream makes the sauce more of like a cottage cheese or ricotta texture. It just isn't a nice texture in your mouth. It doesn't set well on the pasta. Or the 2 quarts of light cream turns into more like a cheesy milk, and it slides off the pasta, and it's kind of runny. It doesn't really have a good flavor to it. So I put that on medium heat with a little bit of salt and pepper for about 15 minutes. You don't ever want to let it boil. If you boil it, you can actually spoil your cream, so you want to make sure you don't get to a full boil. You want to let it simmer. I call it a rumble. It gets kind of foamy or a little bit bubbly. That's how you know your sauce is ready. While you wait for the sauce to be ready, once the water is boiling for your pasta, I usually take 1 pound of penne or rigatoni, but I do not actually have that. So I'm using today 1 pound of rotini. Any brand or any kind of pasta will work. And I cook that on medium to high heat for about 10 minutes or so. Once your sauce is rumbling, as I call it, I usually take 1 8-ounce bag of Italian blend cheese, but they did not have that at the store. So I grabbed an 8-ounce bag of mozzarella and Parmesan blend, and also an 8-ounce bag of Colby Jack. The Italian blend necessarily isn't as important, but if it doesn't have an Italian blend or a pizza blend or something like that, you can grab a plain mozzarella. As long as it is mozzarella, the sauce will work correct. The Colby Jack cheese, you definitely want to make sure that it is Colby Jack. It can be any brand of Colby Jack. You whisk that together, and once it gets to the consistency that you want, that the cheese is melting into the sauce, then I take about 4 ounces of grated Parmesan, and you do the same thing. You take your whisk and you slowly stir it together and make sure that it is not clumpy or it is not sticking to the bottom of your pan, because if it does, it'll burn and your sauce will taste burnt and it won't be good. Once that is done, you take the sauce off the stove, off the heat, let it rest for about 5 minutes so it fluffs up and makes really nice sauce. Once the pasta is done, you drain your pasta. I always rinse it with hot water to get the excess starch off. You don't necessarily have to, that's just what I do. And that's how I make my homemade Alfredo. Thank you.